Hi, welcome to my channel. Today, we will introduce you to the book Power of Now. In recent years, people's pace of life is accelerating, and the pressure of competition is also increasing. This leads to frequent occurrences of depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders. According to the Global Emotions Report conducted by the analytics company Gallup, over the years, the social negative mood index of global respondents has increased year by year, and people around the world are more depressed, angry, and scared than ever. German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believes that the life of an individual is a constant struggle. Do you agree? What kind of emotional pain have you experienced in your life? How can we face our pain and be free from it? Perhaps you can find the answer in the Power of Now. The author of this book is the world-famous spiritual mentor, Eckhart Tolle. In his youth, Tolle also suffered from depression, anxiety, and at times was even suicidal. However, just when he was on the brink of complete despair, an unexpected experience miraculously liberated him. Since then, he has been living in a state of serenity and peace. The experience, at that time, completely changed Tolle's life. Since then, he has devoted himself to explaining, integrating, deepening this change, and sharing his practical experience to others. At present, he gives lectures all over the world. Through teaching, he conveys this message to people in simple and clear language. We can free ourselves from this pain and move deeply into the world of inner peace. The Power of Now, which originated from Tolle's lectures, seminars, and consulting meetings, is a classic. This book helps us realize that we feel pain and live with constant anxiety because we have been under the control of our brain. We are constantly recalling the past and worrying about the future, when in truth the past and the future are just meaningless conceptions of time. Everything is happening in the present, and that is all we will truly ever have. Only by focusing on the now can we be free from pain and achieve inner peace and serenity. Let's read this book for you from the following 3 aspects. Part 1, why do people feel pain? Part 2, how does moving deeply into the now ease pain? Part 3, how can we move deeply into the now? We have previously unlocked Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, in which he says, for countless generations, our biochemical system adapted to increasing our chances of survival and reproduction, not our happiness. Achieving real happiness is not going to be much easier than overcoming old age and death. Almost no one can be in a state of constant happiness. There will always be moments when we are in great pain. What kind of pain have you been through? Have you ever wondered why we experience pain? What is the cause of our suffering? Pain is the result of our state of mind. The mind is a tool of your brain which may help us if we use it correctly. If it is not used properly, it will bring us a lot of pain. Let's take a look at how our minds create pain for us. First of all, our minds are controlling us. Our minds are best at constantly associating through comparison, analysis, judgment, which results in the incessant creation of ideas that come and go. If you have ever come across a mentally disturbed person on the street, you may see them incessantly talking or muttering to themselves. You might think, why do they talk so much? They are not so different from yourself actually. Your stream of consciousness is likely just as active as theirs. The only difference is, you don't verbalize it. Now, take a moment to observe your own thoughts. What is going on in your mind at this moment? Can you stop thinking? Of course you can. Not being able to stop thinking is a pain that all of us experience. What is even more concerning is that most of us never reflect on the state of our own minds, yet unconsciously identify with it. We think that these are my ideas, my thoughts, my choices, and that entity of thinking is ourselves. When we identify with our thoughts, emotions, likes and dislikes, we are actually captured by our minds and unwittingly become slaves to it, allowing it to control our whole life. Are you a little confused right now? Isn't it me who is thinking about the problem? Isn't it me who feels joy and sorrow? No. It's just the self-image you have slowly sketched out in your mind since birth. This false self created by the brain's mind is called the ego. The ego is an illusion, and it has been living in a state of fear and lack. People's fear of loss, failure, and injury all stem from the ego's fear of death. People constantly pursue wealth, fame, status, and power, which is the ego's attempt to make up for its own emptiness and apathy through identification with the outside world. People often feel lonely and lost because of the existence of the ego, which blinds us to who we really are. Therefore, the more people identify with the ego created by our minds, the more agony they will feel. Second, our minds make us suffer from negative emotions. Emotion is the manifestation of the mind in our body. For example, an aggressive thought will make people feel angry and the body will immediately enter a state of fight. When threatened, people feel frightened and the body will instinctively become smaller. We usually are not consciously aware of our thinking patterns. We feel an emotion, then realize what we are thinking. Being unaware of our emotions and controlled by our minds causes us to experience more pain and suffering. The pain caused by negative emotions can be divided into the pain of the now and the pain of the past. The pain of the now comes from the resistance to the status quo, and the degree of pain depends on the intensity of that resistance. For example, in a relationship. Friends, if you want to read these books but are short of time, then I have brought the key points of this book for you, which is the main point of the entire book. Reading it is equivalent to reading the entire book. If you want to buy, you will find the link in the description box and comment box, and it is only a limited time offer, so hurry up. When the two parties break up, it will be more painful for the one who cannot accept the fact of the breakup. The more they resist, the more painful it will be. If the pain of the now is not resolved in time, it remains in our bodies and accumulates with the pain of the past to form a negative emotional energy field, which Tolle calls the pain body. In most cases, the pain body is dormant. With the passage of time, we seem to feel less pain, but in fact, it is not reduced, but hidden in the body, lying dormant. When we experience a situation in present associated with the pain of the past, the pain body will be triggered. What motivates the pain body may be an idea, a glance, or simple throwaway sentence someone says to us. Once it is triggered, the pain body will elicit an over-the-top negative response. A normally sane person suddenly transforms into a destructive stranger, causing grief for themselves and those around them. For example, when couples quarrel, it is common for them to remember the wrongs the other has committed in the past and bring it up in the present argument. This causes a bigger fight between the two, mutual losses, and can even lead to the destruction of their relationship. This is the consequence of a triggered pain body. Finally, our minds trap us in time. If you observe the thoughts in your head, you will find that most of the thoughts are either memories of the past or expectations for the future, such as I met an old classmate yesterday. I'm going to see a client tomorrow. When I become rich, I will travel everywhere. When this child grows up, I can finally relax. The mind always unconsciously focuses on the past and the future. Because we are identified with our mind, we are consumed by the past and the future, locking us in the trap of time. Our negative attitude is in part a result of falling into a time trap instead of focusing on the now. Anxiety, tension, stress, and unease are caused when our minds pay too much attention to the future and not enough attention to the now, while guilt, remorse, sadness, and resentment are caused when our minds pay too much attention to the past instead of the now. However, the past is in the past and will not happen again, while the future has not yet happened. It only exists in our minds in his imagination. The only thing we have and can grasp is the now. To summarize, we know that our mind creates a false ego through endless thoughts, controls us, and brings us great pain through negative emotions, and that by focusing on the past and the future, we get trapped in a time trap. Therefore, as long as we agree with our own minds, we will always live in pain. So how can we get rid of this pain? You have to move deeply into the now. The practice of moving deeply into the now is to liberate our attention from the past and the future, to focus on the present moment, to pay attention to what is happening out and inside of ourselves in the present moment. We begin this process by observing our behaviors, actions, thoughts, and emotions. So why does moving deeply into the now ease pain? First of all, moving deeply into the now can help free us from the bondage of our minds. Now we know that our minds create a false ego through compulsive thoughts that replaced our real selves. When we unconsciously identify with the ego, we are controlled by the mind and become slaves to it. Then once we realize that it is not our true selves who are thinking, we begin to liberate ourselves from intrusive thought. Next, we can observe our own mind activity. When we look at the brain's thoughts without judgment, we are not only aware of the thoughts that come and go, but also that we are observing them. For example, when you listen to the intrusive voice in your brain, consider yourself an observer. Don't judge or condemn what you hear, but tell yourself that there is a voice and you are listening to it. At this time, a new dimension of consciousness has come in. As you listen to the thought, you feel a conscious presence, your deeper self behind or underneath the thought, as it were. The so-called presence is the you living in the present, living in every moment. If you do not identify with the mind, it lacks the vitality to continue to exist and will soon dissipate. At this point, you will experience a kind of interruption of thinking, that is, a gap of no mind. Now, we become highly focused and are not controlled by our minds. We will experience an inner peace and joy from the bottom of our hearts. When a gap of no mind is first experienced, it may be very short, but through consistent practice, it will become longer and longer. In addition to observing the thoughts, observing your own actions can also create this gap of no mind. For example, when climbing stairs, we can focus on the movement of our legs. When washing our hands, we can focus on the movements of our hands. By doing this, the mind stops for a while, and the consciousness becomes stronger. However, our minds are so cunning that once we relax our attention, it swoops in. Therefore, we should keep practicing prolonging a gap of no mind and strengthen our consciousness. When our consciousness is strong enough, we can calmly watch our thoughts come and go. As Tolle said, one day you may catch yourself smiling at the voice in your head, as you would smile at the antics of a child, and observe them calmly without their inference and control. That's when we are freed from the bondage of minds. Secondly, surrendering to the now can help us eliminate the suffering of negative emotions. We say that the pain of the now stems from resistance to the status quo, and the degree of pain depends on the intensity of that resistance. The more you resist, the more pain you experience. On the other hand, the more you accept the situation in the now, the less you suffer. Therefore, if you want to reduce the pain of the now, you must surrender to the now, no matter what the situation is at this moment. Accept it willingly. In this way, we halt the pain creation process. Surrendering to the now is to let go of all the resistance and accept the now unconditionally. It is not a passive tolerance of any situation in life without taking action to change it. Imagine walking alone on a foggy night with a bright flashlight in your hand, which highlights a narrow and bright path for you in the fog. The thick fog is a metaphor for our circumstances. The flashlight shining through the thick fog is our consciousness and awareness of life, and the small pathway identified is the now. So, how does surrender help us get rid of our pain? For instance, when you get stuck in the mud, you don't say, "Okay, I resign myself to being stuck in the mud." Nor do you need to deceive yourself and say that there is nothing wrong with being stuck in the mud and let yourself sink deeper and deeper. Instead, we are keenly aware of the current situation, that we are stuck in a mud, and we know that we should find a way to get out of it. There is no criticism or resistance to this situation in your mind, and there is no negative emotion. After that, you will take action and try your best to get out of the mud. Instead of resisting the now, we accept and surrender to the now, so that there will be no pain in our hearts. In this way, we experience the freedom of mind and inner peace that are not controlled by the external life situation. There is a great deal of energy in surrender, and by surrendering to the now, we have the power to change our lives. So, how do we dispel the pain of the past? We have said that the pain of the past converges in the pain body, which is hidden inside our bodies and is dormant most of the time. Only when we are triggered will we feel its presence. At such a time, we may become irritable, depressed, angry, and dismayed. This time is precisely the opportunity for us to disintegrate the pain body. When we are faced with negative emotions such as irritability and anger, don't suppress or resist them. Accept them. Full acceptance is surrender. Once we accept them, we can observe these negative emotions. In this process of observation, there is no need to take any action or make any judgment, just to observe. Focus on your body and feel those painful feelings. Constant attention will dispel the pain body within ourselves and turn the energy contained in it into the energy of consciousness, making the light of our consciousness stronger. Lastly, focusing on the now can help us escape the time trap. As we said earlier, many thoughts are either memories of the past or expectations for the future. When we identify with our own minds, we fall into the trap of time. Our minds then become completely occupied by the past and the future, thus neglecting the precious now. Therefore, when we concentrate on the now, we can escape the trap of time. Some people have experienced the power of the now unwittingly. For instance, when a life-threatening emergency occurs, people's attention will laser focus on the current situation in a highly conscious present state, and is therefore beyond time trap and in the timeless state. Some people like extreme sports such as rock climbing or car racing. This is also because highly stressful sports can force them to move deeply into the now and liberate them from time, thoughts, and problems. So, in daily life, how do we find this feeling of living in the now? We can fully mobilize our sensory organs to connect with the external environment. For example, observe the light, shape and color, listen to the distance, strength, volume, and tone of the sound when you touch something. Feel the temperature and texture. When we do this, we will stay away from the pain of time, from our guilt and sadness caused by paying too much attention to the past, and from our tension and anxiety caused by the future. When our attention turns to the now, we will feel inner peace and calmness, and our life will begin to fill with joy and comfort. When we first begin to pay attention to the now and enter into the timeless state, we may only be able to remain for a few seconds, and then fall into a state of time again. We constantly wander between time and in the now, the unconscious and conscious. As our awareness increases, the time we focus and stay in the now will gradually lengthen. Eventually, the state of now will become our main state of consciousness, which means we have completely jumped out of the trap of time. We now know that moving deeply into the now helps us release the bondage of our minds. Surrendering to the now can help us ease the pain of the present and relieve the pain of the past. And by focusing on the now, we increase our awareness and jump out of the time trap. So how can we move deeply into the now? Let's take a look at some of the methods introduced to us by Tolle in his book. First, observe the mind and stay present. Tolle mentions the method of observing the mind many times in this book. This method can help us get rid of our enslavement to it and find our true selves. We mentioned earlier that Tolle was miraculously relieved by an unexpected event when he was in pain and despair. So what exactly did he go through? At that time, Tolle was mired in anxiety, depression, and fear. A sentence kept popping up in his mind: I cannot live with myself any longer. Then Tolle observed that he had another thought: am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me and myself. Tolle was stunned by this idea, and his thoughts stopped completely, which created that gap of no mind we mentioned earlier. The mind no longer existed, and the feelings of misfortune and fear it created immediately disintegrated. Then he suddenly realized that everything around him was so new and beautiful that he, like a newborn, was amazed at the miracle of life on earth. It was this accidental observation of his mental activity that led to his absence of mind, which freed Tolle from the pain. Later, he learned how to enter consciousness in its pure state and lived in an indescribably joyful state of being. In fact, like Tolle, you can also enter this state and be freed from the observing mind. But how? First of all, sit down in a comfortable position and try to relax. Then, we can focus on the thoughts in our head and observe how they appear, persist, and disappear. Tolle recommends we be like a cat watching a mouse hole. In the process of observation, once the attention is diverted from these thoughts, pull it back and continue to observe the mental activity. Perhaps we cannot be free from our mind right away like Tolle, but through constant practice, we will definitely be able to find the gaps of no mind and lengthen them gradually. By entering the consciousness in its pure state, we can achieve inner peace, serenity, and joy from the depths of the heart. Second, observe the breath and connect with inner body. Conscious breathing is an ancient but also a simple and effective method of meditation. This method is also mentioned in our book on mindfulness. Not only that it helps us to move deeply into the now and get rid of the controlling mind, but also helps us to connect with our inner body. The practice of conscious breathing can be done like this. Close your eyes, focus on the flow of your breathing, inhale and exhale, and experience the feeling of slight ups and downs in your abdomen. We can also imagine ourselves immersed in the luminous light, a sea of consciousness that spreads and surrounds your body and illuminates our bodies as we breathe. The practice of conscious breathing first connects us to our external bodies. Then we shift our attention from breathing to the sensation of the body, focusing on anything we can feel, such as slight numbness in our hands and feet. Next, we take turns to focus on all parts of our bodies: hands, feet, arms, thighs, and so forth. Feel the vital energy in these parts as much as possible. You may feel slight energy beating at your fingertips before you begin to connect with your inner body. We let our attention flow through our bodies like waves, over and over again. When we can feel our whole bodies as a single energy field, we have moved deeply into our inner body. The more consciousness you put into your body, the higher its vibrational frequency becomes. It's like turning on a dimmer switch and then increasing the current to make the lamp brighter. In this high-frequency energy field, negative mentality can no longer affect us, thus deeply rooting us in serenity and peace. If we can feel our inner body all the time, positive and miraculous changes will take place in our lives. Not only that, awareness of the inner body can also help us delay aging, improve immunity, and even cure diseases. However, when we first start practicing, we may encounter some obstacles, such as anxiety and nausea. We must now pay attention to emotions previously unnoticed and ignored. Acknowledge and accept these emotions. Observe and feel them with awareness, so that we can turn them into the energy of consciousness. This makes us present and makes it easier for us to move deeply into our inner body. Third, observe the inner energy field and move into the unmanifested. Our inner feelings are invisible, infinite, and unfathomable. The method of observing the inner energy field is actually the next step beyond the method of observing the inner body. That is to go completely inside and focus on the energy field of the body. Constant and in-depth observation can help us move deeply into the unmanifested. This state is similar to the chaotic state that existed before the formation of heaven and earth, the source of life of all things. It is life in its undifferentiated state prior to its fragmentation into multiplicity. It frees you from bondage to form and identification with form. To observe the inner energy field, we can meditate for 10 to 15 minutes a day. First, find a place that will not be disturbed by the outside world. Sit in a chair, keep your body relaxed, close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Concentrate and feel the whole inner body as a clear, single energy field. Don't think about it, just feel it. Next, focus entirely on feeling. Divert any attention from the physical body. With a high degree of presence consciousness, experience the infinity of the inner body. Pay more attention to this feeling and bond with it. Become one with the energy field, so as to transcend the inner body and enter the state of singularity. Try to stay in this state. Lastly, pay attention to the body, breath, and feeling again. Open your eyes, observe your surroundings for a few minutes without any judgment, and continue to feel in the inner body. The invisible realm you entered in the process of meditation is what Tolle calls the unmanifested. It transcends a mental polarity of good and bad. It is the realm of singularity, and is also the source of all things. It is full of peace, serenity, and joy. We focus our attention on our bodies, and when we reach a state of absolute rest, we have moved deeply into the unmanifested. The more we touch it, the more we feel the energy of life, thus experience a deep sense of peace. No matter what happens, the sense of peace will not disappear. So, in our daily life, we can do more of this kind of exercise. Whether it is to interact with people or to commune with nature, do not focus all your attention on external things in your mind. Keep part of your attention on your inner body and the peace within you as much as possible. Like this, we can maintain awareness of the unmanifested in our daily lives and connect with the source. Now let's review the ways to move deeply into the now. We can observe the mind of the brain, which can help us enter the state of presence and find our true selves, or we can practice conscious breathing and connect with our inner bodies. If we can observe our inner bodies as an invisible inner energy field, we can enter the state of singularity, that is, the unmanifested. This concludes our explanation of the power of now. We now understand that what makes us suffer is not the problems that take place in our lives, but our understanding of things, especially the unconscious identification of our minds. To be free from pain, we need to get rid of the bondage of minds. What we need to do is to move deeply into the now, surrender to the now, and focus on the now. We can observe our minds, observe our behaviors, practice conscious breathing, and then observe our inner bodies and inner energy fields to enter the state of now. Do you know how to face the pain and get out of it now? If you are experiencing physical pain, please practice observing the inner body. If you are experiencing pain caused by negative emotions such as sadness and anxiety, please use the method of observing emotions and turn them into the energy of consciousness. If you don't feel any pain, then observe the mind. See how the brain imprisons us in the cage of mind. and strive to discover your true self and be liberated as soon as possible. No matter how good the method is, we cannot benefit from it if we don't practice. As long as we practice deliberately, we will find that it can bring us a new way of life, so that we can live in the present with awareness. In this way, we can minimize the suffering we experience in life and instead experience peace and joy. I hope you can get something from this bookie.